Alright, in order to install the NAV-TV, the COD-F50 or the COD-F53, you're going to need a few tools. A pair of scissors, a screwdriver that you can use sockets with, or a drill with a socket extension on it, a magnetic telescoping tool in case you drop a screw, a handful of extensions, a socket wrench, a 7mm socket is the only socket you will need, a small flat-headed screwdriver, a trim removal tool, and you will need some double-sided tape. I use the 3M double-sided tape, thin stuff, because of how we're going to mount the Nav TV box. Alright, once you have your tools, you're going to start with your trim removal tool. Start with one corner of the center speaker. There's just several clips that hold it in place. Gently start prying up on it. You're not going to break this, so if you need to use a little bit of force, once you get one side pulled up, you can. Start from the front, work to the back, wiggle it with in the corners to pop up the retaining clips in the corner, and then just hit the speaker cover aside. Next, you're going to want to grab your 7mm socket. There are two 7mm screws in front of the speaker underneath the windshield that you'll want to remove. Go ahead and remove these screws and then put them in your magnetic tray to hold them so you don't lose them. Now that you've got those screws removed, the next thing you're going to need to do is use your trim removal tool, and in the front of the center speaker insert, slowly remove one side and just pop it off into the left. Now that you've removed those screws, just set aside the speaker tray and you can get to the next two screws. There are, again, two 7mm screws at the top of the panel where your switches are and your cover for your AC controls and your Sync 3 system. Remove those two screws and just put them in your magnetic tray. Pull up on the tab in the front. There's some clips that hold this in. Don't be afraid to pull on this. It's not going to break. Just pop the clips on the side. You're going to want to remove the two wiring harnesses for your volume control and for your heater controls. Go ahead and remove those. You can leave the harnesses at the top for your traction control and your camera systems and all that stuff plugged in. No reason to remove those. Just go ahead and put the trim panel up on top when you're done, leaving those other screws or other wiring harnesses enabled. Now you're going to need to remove the 6 screws that hold the Sync 3 system in. If you have a magnetic driver, I recommend using it. Otherwise, slowly remove these, and especially the bottom two, they're a little tricky. This is where your magnetic telescoping tool comes in really handy. You can just leave them slightly threaded, use that tool to pull them out. Again, 6 screws all in all. Be very careful. These can drop and fall inside your dash, and then they're a pain to recover. I actually had to go get a couple replacements because I dropped one in the dash and there was no way to recover it. So to be very careful pulling these out. Actually, any of the screws, these 7mm screws in the dash is that way. Once you have the screws removed, you are free to pull the Sync 3 8-inch touchscreen out. In this case, I've already removed the USB cable on the bottom right hand side because I had this out a little bit earlier in the day. But you're going to want to use the flathead screwdriver and press the tab and slowly pull back on that gray handle. That will release the main harness from the Sync 3 system. Gently pull it out. And then you're going to want to do the same thing with the GPS antenna. These can be a little bit tricky because the tab's small on it. It took me a little bit of time to completely get that tab depressed and pull it out. Whatever you do on any of these things, do not pull on the wires. Pull these harnesses off by the main plastic body. Once you get the GPS antenna off, the UPS and the main harness, feel free to just set it aside for the minute. The next step will be removing the black control module behind the Sync 3 system. Alright, now that you've got all 6 screws out and all the harnesses detached, just set the Sync 3 system aside. Now you need to remove the 3 screws that hold the black control module that sits behind the Sync 3 system out. You can see there's 2 on the left and then there's 1 in the center on the right. Remove the 3 screws that hold this. Again, be careful not to drop any of these screws behind the dash because they are a pain to recover if you drop one. One thing to note with this black control module, you'll see on the module itself that it warns you, do not drop this, do not use it if it's been dropped. There are some very sensitive electronics in here, so be very careful when pulling this out. Set it aside, do not drop it. These are very expensive. If you do drop them, you will actually ruin your parts of your Sync 3 system, your camera system, your GPS, and all that good stuff. So this controls, a lot of your back end stuff like your massaging seats and things like that. So don't drop this. Remove all 3 wiring harnesses from them. Again, pull the harnesses from their plastic connectors, not from the wires, and you'll be okay. Once you have the black control module removed from the system, gently put it up on top of your dash, set it away safely so it's not going to fall, and just put it aside for the moment. Alright, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to unbox the components from the NAV-TV kit. You should have a couple wiring harnesses, the controller, a USB cable. Just unbox each of them, set them aside for the time being, and we're going to walk through prepping the entire kit for use. Alright, at this time you want to take the black unit, the black box unit from NAV-TV, and you want to get your 3-sided tape out. You're going to want to cut 4 pieces of tape in equal length on this box, and go ahead and put them on the box in 4 parallel strips, because you're actually going to mount this on that black control module you took out. It's the best place to put it. Keeps it right between the Sync 3 system and that black box. It's a great place to put it up out of the way. All right, the next thing we're going to do is set aside the NAV-TV black box for right now, and we're going to start with installing the wiring harnesses. The nice thing about NAV-TV is, and Ford and all manufacturers for that matter, is there's no 2 connectors that are alike back here, so you can't go wrong in how you install these. It's just a matter of finding the right harness for the right piece. You're going to start first though with the main harness adapter. And the factory harness that went into the Sync 3 system, you're going to find that adapter and you're going to put it in to the harness adapter. Be careful not to bend any of the pins. Do this slowly. As you slide the harness in, that gray lever will move, the lock. Just slide and lock it up and click it into place. The next thing you're going to do is take the 8-pin from the harness that came from NAV-TV, and you're going to plug it into the second smaller harness from NAV-TV. So that 8-pin connector goes in that right side. Just go ahead and plug it in and snap it in place. It only goes in one way. The next part of the harness you're going to install requires one of the factory connectors. So that small extension harness from NAV-TV, you're going to replace or plug in the factory harness that was in the back of that black control box. Once that's in, you're going to take the NAV-TV black box and install it on the main long harness that you got from NAV-TV. And once those 2 connections are in, we can move on to the next part. At this point, you're going to want to install the extension cable from the smaller NAV-TV harness into the factory connector that was on the black control module. Again, be careful not to bend the pins. It slides in, it snaps in really easy, but be gentle, and go ahead and install the other 2 connectors. They're color coded onto the black control module that you took out earlier. The clips should be facing towards you, black in the center, black to black, gold to gold, and they should just click and pop right on. Again, do not use the wires to reattach these. Use the plastic harness to reattach these. Once you have that in, those connections put back in, now is the time to reinstall that black control module. Again, be careful installing these screws. If you drop one, you're going to drop it down inside the dash, and they are a pain to get out. I actually went to Ford and purchased 2 or 3 extra 7mm screws as just a precaution in case I dropped one, and inevitably I did end up dropping one of the 3 originals that went in here. So just a word of the warning, be careful with these because they are a pain to flush out. And if you miss one, you know, you're going to miss a screw, and you'll have rattling in your dash until you get it replaced. So go ahead and start them. I use my drill on a low setting, I think 3 or 4, to put these back in place. They just need a good snug. They don't have to be cranked down tight. If you crank these down too hard, you'll actually break the plastic where the screws, you know, hold the control module in. So just screw them in gently and put it back in place. All right, at this point, you're going to want to pick up the Nav TV box and remove the other side of that 3M tape. It can be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get these the outside cover off this tape. Be patient, take your time, and go ahead and remove all 4 strips at this point. All right, now that you got the double-sided tape completely exposed, we're going to go ahead and mount this. You might want to move the cables out of the way so you can easily install this. We're going to first take these extra cables and zip tie them to the harness. These cables are really used for the COD-53 module for the extra inputs. This harness or the system we bought isn't going to utilize those. If you need those and you have the other harness, there's instructions on how to install those. So for now, just zip tie those out of the way. And then we're going to install this directly on the black control module. One thing that I do is I've installed the USB cable to the nav box. On the front side, there is a USB connection, and I'm going to put this and tuck this up under the center speaker. In case there's ever a firmware update, I can plug my laptop directly into this with just removing a couple screws to get access to the box, and that kind of future-proofs me. You know, if there's any firmware updates from Nav TV on this box, makes it really easy. So again, just move the wires out of the way so you get a clear access to the black box, and then just gently stick it on there. Give it a good push. Make sure it's in place, and then take the USB cable, wrap it up, you know, in a tight loop, and just plug it up and tuck it away in the center of the dash. Next, you're going to want to grab the main harness you got from Nav TV. There is a black lock lever on this. The original from the factory is gray. This one's a black or a dark gray. You need to release it and pull it all the way to the right in order to use it and install the Sync 3 system back into this rig. All right, we're going to install the Nav TV harness into the Sync 3 system. Again, pull that clip all the way back to the right. You see I failed to do that, but you're going to want to pull that all the way down to the right, gently put it in and into the Sync 3 system, and then as it enters in, you're going to just slide it up. It will lock in place and allow you to do some extra work. Next, you're going to want to reattach your GPS antenna. And then lastly, you're going to want to install your USB 2 connector. As I said, mine was earlier in the video, mine was already disconnected from something I was doing earlier in the day, but make sure you reinstall that, because if you don't, your USB ports will not work. Start tucking in your wires for cleanup for reinstall. As I mentioned earlier in the video, we're going to install the Nav TV box in the top right corner of that black control box. I didn't do that in the first part of this video. Just gently pull on it. The three-sided tape will give. You might have to reapply it. You can reuse it. It's been freshly used. It's not going to lose its stickiness or its tactfulness. But we need to put it in more of the top right of that box so the Sync 3 system fits in there just right. There's some fins on the back of the Sync 3 system that will catch if you do like I did and you put it in the dead center. So move it more to the top right of that box, tuck your wires out of the way, and then we can go ahead and install the Sync 3 head unit. There are two little pins that hold the Sync 3 mounts in place. You might have to fight with the wiring a little bit just to make sure everything's out of the way, and make sure that the wiring harness for your speaker, radio controls, and climate controls aren't binding. Once you get it in, those two guide pins in, I would start by putting a couple screws of your screws in place. Again, because the extra wiring, it will want to push out a little bit. Once you tuck it in place and you get a few screws started, you're good to go. One trick that I learned with putting those bottom true screws in that are a lot more difficult, if you use your magnetic telescoping removal tool to put it on there on the tip, you can actually slide them in place and gently turn them to get them started in the threads, and then you can go ahead and tighten them down. Makes it a little bit easier. I don't remember if I do that in this video or not, but I did have to take this out at one point to do some other work on another feature I was installing, and using that magnetic telescoping tool was a big help to get them started. All right, next we're going to install the dash bezel. You're going to want to bring it down and grab the two wiring harnesses that you had pulled out earlier and gently reattach them. You can't mess them up again. Each connection is unique, their own pin size, their shape and form. Plug them both back in. Start at the bottom with the two orange clips and gently guide them into the holes, and then just give it a good push, and it will lock right up in place. You might want to need to make sure that you pull the cables back for your buttons at the top of your dash. Just gently pull them back so everything falls in place. I'm going to go ahead and turn my turn signals on just to make sure that the nav system is working. So that was the left and to the right, and it's working as expected. All right, next we're going to put it in reverse just to make sure the reverse camera engages properly, and it does. All right, the last thing we need to do is reinstall the center speaker and the screws. You should have 4 7mm screws left at this point. You're going to need 2 at the top of the faceplate for your Sync 3 system and your controls. Go ahead and install those. Do not use a lot of force when tightening these down. They need to be snug. Too tight, you'll break the plastic bezel, and those bezels are expensive. Too loose, it'll rattle. So you just want a nice, firm, snug, but nothing cranked down too heavily. The center speaker, there are 2 little clips to guide it in. As you pick it up and put it in place, gently start with the front at an angle, come down, and then just give it a nice little tap. Once you get in place, it'll click in spot. The last 2 7mm screws, just as the same as when you took it out. Install those in the front, and crank them down again. Don't over tighten them. It is plastic, and once you have those completely removed, you will then reinstall the center cover. All right, lastly, we're going to do a final test of the system now that everything's installed. Make sure it all works exactly as planned. We're going to start with a single click. It will show us the reverse cameras, change to the rear camera, change the panoramic camera, and change to the bed view, and then back to the 360. The nice thing is all of the features work. It will remember what you selected when you turn it off. Single button takes you back to the main menu. A double click takes you to the front. Again, front camera by itself, panoramic view. That button doesn't work, and then the 360 view. Single click takes you back to the beginning. Again, thank you for watching. Hope this video helps you as we go through the turn signals left and right. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe below. Have a great day.